So for the 80s, I went for something that is generally looked at now as a good thing, but at the time was actually seen as a terrible film, and that is The Thing by John Carpenter. The reason I went for this movie is because it represents the 80s probably the best. It's got a heck of a lot of gore and it has some of the best special effects you're ever going to see of any film at the time, and everything in this film is probably the most well done of the 80s, besides something like The Shining. This film creates a lot of tension and a lot of claustrophobia as well. And the reason this film was able to do tension so well and claustrophobia was because it was set in the middle of Antarctica with a small group of men in the middle of Antarctica. And that's what made it scary, because throughout the film you never knew who was a thing and who wasn't. And the film had quite a few jump scares in it as well that were very good, but we're going to be focusing on one throughout this part, and that would be Fuchs' death in The Thing. That is not one of the good ones in this film. And then for the 2000s, which I'm going to be comparing to the Fuchs scene, is going to be the tall man in It Follows, which is generally considered to be one of the best jump scares of the 2010s. Now the reason I picked Fuchs' death is because it shows what 80s jump scares are mainly like. And the reason I picked It Follows is because that has a 80s style jump scare done correctly. So now let's get started with the comparisons. Now let's start with The Thing. The Thing has quite a bit of build-up in it, and it is known for that because throughout the entire film you're tense because you don't know who is the Thing. And the build-up is the lights slowly go out in the station when Fuchs is in there. And Fuchs is just looking around. And then we're going to get over to It Follows. In the scene in It Follows, there's a lot of build-up as well, because she had just seen the titular It down in the kitchen. And then you slowly start to hear a knock on the door, and you know it's just one of her friends. And then they come in, and then another friend starts to knock on the door. You don't know if it's it or it's not. And then we get to the jump scare itself. The jump scare in The Thing is Fuchs looks into the hallway door, and we see a black figure quickly run past the doorway, accompanied with an extremely loud noise. And then It Follows, the jump scare itself is when they open the door, the friend is just standing there in the hallway. Everything seems fine. And slowly in the background, this tall man comes up behind. And then there's the payoff itself. The payoff in The Thing is that Fuchs is dead. And then the payoff in It Follows is that the girl is chased by the tall man. And it also shows her that nowhere is safe. While both of these don't really have the interesting of a payoff, I generally think that It Follows did it a lot better, because It Follows was actually more slowly paced, and it was just not as loud, which is better in every way. And it's generally looked upon as the much better jump scare than the one in The Thing, because the one in The Thing is just kind of thrown in there, and the other jump scares in The Thing are fine. They're actually really good, like the defibrillator, but this one is just really bad. It's just a terrible jump scare, and that is why most people usually see the one in The Thing as the much worse of a jump scare. For the 90s, I decided to go for a movie that isn't very popular with many horror fans, and that movie would be The Exorcist 3 from 1990. The reason this movie isn't more popular than it already is because The Exorcist 2 is one of the worst horror films of all time, completely overshadowing this film, which is apparently one of the best horror films you can watch. It's like a good psychological thriller, and a lot of people say that's one of the best jump scares of all time, but we'll get to that later. The film throughout has people being possessed by the demon and killing random people, but up to this point they all have had a pattern, and to get to this point we're going to talk about the build-up. But first we have to get to the jump scares that we're going to be looking at. The jump scares we're going to be looking at are the death scene in Exorcist 3, the hallway scene, and the other scene that we're going to be looking at is the lawnmower scene in Sinister. So first, let's start with the build-up. Both of these scenes have a lot of build-up, but The Exorcist 3 has a lot more build-up than in Sinister. In The Exorcist 3, the build-up lasts a long time. The scene that the jump scares in lasts 5 minutes, and the scene is just one long still of a hallway, building up a lot of suspense. It lasts for 5 minutes, so it's all tense, and you don't know when it's going to happen. And to make it more tense, they add a small jump scare in there that's fake out to make you put your guard down. And then you know that she is going to be killed because the killer has said her name, so you know she's screwed. But you just don't know when it's going to happen because it's just building up. You don't know when the thing is going to kill her. And then she checks a patient room, and then as soon as she turns away, we get to the next part. Then for Sinister also has quite a bit of build-up because you know throughout the other ones what happens to people, they just don't know how it's going to happen. And then this kid starts to get onto the lawnmower. It starts to build up, and then you slowly start to see something come on screen. And then we get to the next part, and that is the jump scare itself. The jump scare in Exorcist 3 is that when she turns and locks the door and then she walks away, the door flies open and a figure with scissors comes up behind her, and then it cuts to the payoff, which we'll get to next. And then the jump scare in Sinister is that when the kid's mowing the yard for some reason in the middle of the night, he mows over a body suddenly, and it just catches you off guard every time. And then we get to the payoff. The Exorcist 3's payoff is that the lady is dead, and it cuts to a headless Jesus statue to help imply what happened to her. You don't see the death, you just know what happened because it shows you kind of what happened without any of the graphic detail. But then in Sinister, there really isn't a payoff. The payoff is kind of just that the family is now dead. That's only really the payoff in that scene. But then why is Sinister's jump scare scene is just as great as the one in Exorcist 3? It's because it's not a regular jump scare, it goes with the rest of the film. And also, it's super well done, even if it doesn't have a payoff. And it also shows how evil this demon is by showing all these graphic deaths that these kids are being forced to do. And you can tell by Ethan Hawke's face, this scene is just terrifying. So both of these jump scares are good. So then let's get to the next section. So I know some of you are going to be asking, what makes a good jump scare if you can't really tell the difference? Well, I can answer that. If a jump scare feels cheap and just kind of thrown in there just to make you jump, then it's not generally well done. A jump scare is supposed to make you feel tense for the rest of the scene and for the rest of the movie if they do it correctly. But most of the time they won't even hit that mark. Then why are most of them bad? Well, to see what makes them good is that they follow those 3 rules, and then they do extra. They make it connected to the story, make it worth something. Don't make it cheap, and that's how you do it well. The examples I mainly used were some very great examples of an excellent jump scare, especially the one in Exorcist 3. But it also creates this mindset that jump scares make a movie more scary, which that's not true. They're just there to make you jump. And if they're in there, usually they have run out of an idea of ways to scare you. Because there really isn't anything scary about a loud noise just randomly appearing. It makes you startled, but it doesn't scare you. The reason The Exorcist 3 is seen as one of the great ones is because it makes you scared. It makes you wonder when it's going to happen because you know it's going to happen, and the fake out just makes you more tense. And it puts you in your comfort zone as well. So then when it actually does the jump scare, it's more startling. It's not a regular jump scare. It's actually scary. But that is a very, very rare case. And we'll get into why they're so bad later on. But jump scares aren't just limited to one medium. Comic books have also done it for many years through this way of the page turn. And those can also be done right or wrong. Here's an example of a good one. In the Enigma of Amigara Fault, page before the page turn, one of the guys looks into a crack. And then the guy starts yelling that there's something coming towards him. And it makes you scared to turn the page. And in the next page is the jump scare, which is this.
And that is an example of one done right. And that's the end of the episode. See you guys next week.